just going to spend most of the time responding to any questions that you may have. The House gets started this week. The General Assembly gets started this week with work. We're going to continue to focus on, I believe, policies that are going to help us grow the economy and hopefully continue a positive path towards economic recovery in the state. First and foremost, we've got to worry about the budget, but we don't have to worry near as much about the budget as we did 2 years ago when we had a structural deficit approaching $3 billion. We may even have a slight surplus. So it puts us in a much better position, I think, to get the budget done and get it out what I hope is in record time. You know, we finished the budget in late May, early June, and overrode the veto in the early part of June. I hope that first, I hope there's not a veto to override. I don't anticipate it, and I do think that our good friends and colleagues in the Senate will get us a budget early, and we'll be able to move on. Beyond the primary objective of moving forward with the budget, we'll also focus on things like education reform, meaningful education reform. As I said on opening day, reform that is based in large part on the great ideas and the successes we already have in K-12 education in North Carolina, and we have many of them. We've got to better engage the superintendents, the principals, and the teachers, and come up with what I think is an environment that really encourages innovation and provides a lot more flexibility. And I think I mentioned this in my opening day speech. Some of that is as simple as trying to provide traditional K-12 education, the flexibility that we already find in many of our charter schools. And what does that look like? And that really came out of a discussion I've had with some superintendents who are considering applying for charters. And I asked them why, and they said so that we can have the flexibility and do some innovative things that are more difficult to do in traditional K-12 education. I said, rather than spend the time and energy to apply for a charter and have a single school in your district that has that flexibility, why don't we look at the laws and the rules promulgated through DPI and other places and figure out how we repeal those so that you have that flexibility? And I think that's at least philosophically where I hope my House members will go on recommendations for education reform. We will move forward very aggressively with regulatory reform. I've asked Representative Moffitt to chair a new standing committee in the House. We will be announcing 3 subcommittees focused on various areas because it's not just about environmental reform, which most people jump to when they think about regulatory reform, but it's all aspects of regulation. And not just regulation that affects business, but also regulations that affect individuals and citizens' interaction with government. Y'all may know I got a parking ticket 2 weeks ago, and you didn't get to tweet this one, John. But the fact of the matter is I got it, and I shouldn't have. I had paid for it electronically. I had a receipt. I called the parking office down in Charlotte, and I said, you all have clearly made a mistake. What do I need to do to fix this? And I was presented with the appeal process, the application I had to fill out, and the 10 days that may have to go through to see if administrative appeal was okay. And if that wasn't acceptable, then I had 2 other appeal processes. For an instance, when a regulator made a mistake, and then I am now responsible as a citizen to correct that mistake. So philosophically, when we're talking about regulatory reform, we really are talking about reforms that affect a more customer-friendly, citizen-friendly way of the government interacting with our citizens and our businesses. Tax reform, I've heard some discussion around tax reform. We think that the Senate and specifically Senator Rucho have done yeoman's work in identifying a real problem. Our tax system is antiquated. It's probably approaching some of the fundamentals of it, 50 years old, and it needs to be reformed. And there are many good ideas out there. I think there are good ideas in Senator Rucho's plan, the Senate plan. There are other good ideas out there. We have to make progress on tax reform this year. I think that we're more likely to arrive at an approach that does seek to broaden the base, does seek to eliminate corporate income taxes and reduce personal income taxes. And our members will be working with the Senate and the governor to figure out how to do that judiciously and not just create a different kind of complexity. Because when you move to a consumption-based system, it could potentially be as complex at the end of the day as the current system we have, and we need to work through that to make sure it's not just a different kind of complexity. Other bills that we'll be moving forward with that are important to us is voter ID. It will be a bill that will move fairly quickly, and it will be a bill that ultimately requires a photo ID to be able to vote. And the mechanics that we're putting into place are ones that will allow easy access to a government-issued ID at no cost to the citizen. We have, I think we're working on a draft bill. We'll get that out there fairly quickly. We will do hearings and go through a fairly lengthy process to make sure that we still provide citizen input in addition to all that we did 2 years ago. In terms of the session itself, I've made no secret that I think that we need to get into the legislative work very quickly. I think you'll see that with us taking up substantive bills in committee on Thursday. And I think that you will see us move very quickly and very efficiently towards an end that I still hope happens by the end of May or the beginning of June. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yep.
Speaker Tillis, Governor McCrory said this morning that he would like to see some changes to how we fund university and community college systems, specifically that he thought that funding for higher education ought to be based on how schools do in getting their graduates jobs rather than how many students are enrolled in an institution at any one point in time. Could you or one of your education chairmen who I know is here respond to that idea?
Yeah, I think the governor and I have spoken about this, and that's consistent with some of the work that's coming out of the strategic planning committee that was put together with the Board of Governors. And what it really means, Mark, is making sure that what we're teaching our students in universities and community college systems are aligned with the market demands. There's a couple of other states that have made changes recently, Virginia being one of them, saying that rather than, and again, it's more or less consistent with education reform that I talked about at the K through 12 level. It's getting the legislature out of governing all the details about the universities, how the universities operate, and more measure results, and make sure that the skill sets that we're creating, the degrees that we're granting coming out of our institutions are better aligned with the business demands in the state. You know, one of the most frustrating things that we have, I think, as legislators is hearing the businesses out there saying we simply do not have qualified people to fill these jobs. We've got a 9% plus unemployment rate, and we have hundreds or maybe thousands of jobs that can't be filled because the right skill sets are not available. And I think that that's one of the reasons the governor said that, and I agree with him.
Speaker, did you visit with